Alrighty, and the last little topic here in Chapter 1 is just a reminder about some things in safety. And these are all good reminders. These are good things to keep in your head. When working in networks, a lot of times we're thinking just computers and servers and those sort of things, but you start accessing pathways above suspended ceilings and under floors and ductwork and all kinds. So you're going to start running into other things. So we should remember some things about safety. Okay, so one of the first things they mention is, knowing escape routes and emergency exits. Absolutely. I even remind my students in class about that. Know where things are, like fire suppression systems. Especially when you're in server rooms, there's usually some kind of gas-based system for extinguishing fires. Know where those are. Know how those work. Know where the emergency switches are, emergency shutoffs, those sorts of things, emergency power off switches, that sort of thing, and know where fire extinguishers are, and know how these things are working, what actually gets shut off, what is engaged, what is not, that sort of stuff. So, as you're the new guy somewhere, start trying to pay attention to this stuff and soak it in. Fire extinguishers, they remind you that, we're dealing with a lot of electrical things, so the extinguishers around our area should be rated as C for dealing with electrical fires, but you're going to find probably most of the stuff you encounter is ABC. A is your ordinary, like paper, wood, combustible material. B is your liquids, like your greases and those sorts of things that you'd have in a kitchen. But C is the electrical. So most of the stuff we encounter need to be C rating on the fire extinguisher at least. But you're going to find most things are A, B, C. Something else that you will probably encounter is dealing with MSDSs, material safety data sheets. Anytime you're dealing with any kind of chemicals, cleaning chemicals and so forth, there is always an MSDS that explains what is in that bottle of cleaner. How do you deal with it? How do you dispose of it? How do you deal with it if somebody gets it on them, on their hands, on their on their face and their eyes, that sort of thing. So as you start dealing with any kind of chemicals or cleaners or contact cleaners, you're going to run into MSDSs, and you want to be paying attention to those, warnings on containers. That's stuff I encountered a lot when I was working in lumber yards and dealing with chemicals and construction and that sort of stuff. HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, you'll be dealing with these because you'll need to have these for keeping networking closets cool, server rooms cool, and your HVAC systems are there to move air through, but also keep the temperature regulated, keep the humidity regulated, and all those kinds of things. You're also going to be dealing with spaces above ceilings. Those are typically called plenums. That's oftentimes where your network cabling is run. We'll mention this when we talk about our cabling in a later chapter. Anytime I'm running cabling through an area that's a plenum, that cabling should be plenum rated, meaning the insulation on the outside is such that if it does catch on fire, the levels of toxicity, the levels of toxins coming off there are very low, that it would not cause people to asphyxiate just from the fumes on that. So yeah, dealing with HVAC systems, you're also going to deal with plenums, and those are the air spaces typically above ceiling tiles and so forth in a building. Dealing with static electricity. Static electricity can damage components in computers, servers, those sorts of things. So if you're working on any type of component, you're tearing apart the case to put in a new hard drive, put in a new NIC, put in a new video card, whatever it happens to be, make sure you're grounding yourself with a static strap so that any electrostatic discharge or buildup on your body does not charge and burn up that component. Installing anything, you're going to be installing switches and racks and taking switches out of racks, putting servers in racks, taking servers out of racks. This is typically done a lot of times as teamwork. You're not usually, some of this stuff is heavy enough that you might need 2 or 3 people to help you. Watch out where your fingers are, watch where your toes are. You're not lifting with your back, you're lifting with your legs, if you will. Those kinds of things. Watch all that stuff. You're oftentimes dealing with putting it in racks or server cabinets, that sort of stuff. And this is where they show you open racks and server cabinets. A lot of times, sometimes in a networking closet, you'll have a rack like this for routers and switches, but then you'll have a cabinet like this that the servers go in. Not always the case, but, that kind of thing. Sometimes you actually put everything in a cabinet like this. The front and back doors are typically ventilated, and the sides typically come off if you need access to the side of it. The front and back doors open, and they also lock too. kind of an idea, or I should say, just so you're aware. So yeah, they talk about, again, wearing electrostatic distraps, and make sure you're grounded, pay attention where your tools are, those kind of things. So just some good reminders about safety. When dealing with electrical safety, there is OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They have all kinds of guidelines when dealing with these kind of things. So again, maybe when you're the new guy working somewhere, they're like, hey, make sure you're wearing this. Hey, make sure you're doing this. That might be a guideline for that facility on things that you should do or should not do when working in closets and that sort of stuff. There's regulations on that, really, to keep the worker safety, you safe in the environment. Troubleshooting, they introduce the idea right off the bat here in Chapter 1 on troubleshooting. They give you these steps of identifying the problem, establishing a theory, test that theory, establish a plan, implement it, verify functionality, then document. Yeah, that's exactly right. Those are the kind of things you will probably be doing as you're troubleshooting problems in a company. You might actually even be inputting this into a database, if you will. Collecting information from the user, plugging it in, putting down things you've tried and the solutions you did and the date you did them and that sort of thing. I like to remind you too, again, you're more than likely, if you're dealing with network problems, you're going to start with layer 1 and work your way up. Check the patch cables, check the NICs, check IP addresses, and work your way up through the layers that we just got done talking about to try to narrow down exactly where the problem is. So I'm going to plant that seed now. That's more than likely how you're going to work your way through your problems network related.